You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Hello, Colts fans, and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. My name is Joe Hopkins. With me is Mike Chappell, and we're here to discuss what can only be described as an embarrassment from Sunday when the Colts were dismantled in the fourth quarter by the Dallas Cowboys. We'll recap the game. We'll discuss takeaways from that game, at which there are some substantial ones. We'll also take a look at where the Colts stand in the draft order, that is, which at this point in the season is my favorite part of the show. But before we get into all that, Mike, how you holding up?
Holding up pretty good. It's funny. I'm old enough to remember when that game was 21-19. You know?
Yeah. No kidding. The Colts played just well enough to give us hope going into the fourth quarter, and then that evaporated quickly. But let's go step by step here. The Colts at 4-7-1 visit the Cowboys, who 8-3 in Week 13. Prime time matchup for Indianapolis, who is without right tackle Braden Smith and cornerback Kenny Moore in this game. But regardless, no Kenny Moore. The Colts defense still gets off to a good start with a 3-and-out. Fair catch interference on the punt sets the Colts up at their 47. And what did they do with that great field position? You guessed it, a 50-yard field goal. Chase McLaughlin connects from 52 yards out, 3-0 Colts early. Dallas's offense wakes up on their second drive, and they go 73 yards on 12 plays, including a 4th-and-1 conversion. Then CeeDee Lamb caps off the drive with a 20-yard touchdown on a catch and run. I think it was McLeod who tried to tackle Lamb, but Lamb landed on the defender's body and was never actually down. Heads-up play by CD to keep going. Cowboys take the lead 7-3. Colts would respond with a nice drive of their own, however. A couple solid Jonathan Taylor runs sets up a 45-yard bomb to the rookie Alec Pierce. Ryan just threw it up, and Pierce came down with it. A couple plays later, Ryan hits Ashton Doolin in the corner of the end zone. He beat Trevon Diggs for his first touchdown of the season. Just like that, Colts retake the lead, 10-7. Amazing what can happen when you throw deep, Mike.
Yeah, I remember talking to Reggie Wayne a couple of days earlier, and it was about Alec Pierce, and did he hit the rookie wall and this, that, and the other. And because the last month he's had 4 catches. And he said, no, it's really been, it's been a function of what's gone on out there. And he said, this guy right now in his career is a deep ball receiver. That's just who he is. And he said, we need to take more shots. He said, you know me, I'd like to take a shot a quarter. Because it does a lot of things. First, it might give you the big play, but it makes the defense be honest and not squat on all these routes. So it's good to see him take a few more shots in this game.
Yeah, it seems like from game to game, who's going to have the big day really varies. It was Pierce in this one. Last week it was Jelani Woods. It'd be great if one game we can get everybody going at the same time, but we'll tap the brakes here. We might be asking too much. After the Doolin touchdown, the team's within trade punts. Second quarter now. Cowboys' fourth drive, and Dallas takes advantage of good field position. Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb set up 1st and goal. Pollard would punch it in for the touchdown. Cowboys back on top 14-10. Indianapolis looking to respond. They pick up a couple first downs and enter Dallas territory, but on 3rd and 5, Jonathan Taylor can't pick up a blitzing linebacker. Colts punt after the sack and pin Dallas back at their 12. A couple CeeDee Lamb end-around runs give Dallas some breathing room, but on 3rd and 10, Prescott's pass is picked off by Stephon Gilmore. The veteran returns it to the Dallas 19. Mike, Gilmore is playing at an extremely high level this year.
So many people were wondering what were they getting from, 2019 Defensive Player of the Year. He's been their best defensive player. He just has. Won him a couple games, and he just seldom gets beat and makes plays that make a difference. And this was a play where he kind of got physical with the receiver and came away with it. So kudos to him. I'm wondering if he regrets coming here with the way the season has gone, but he's more than held up his end of the bargain.
Yeah, I saw during the game, Kenny Moore tweeted that Gilmore is the best defensive player he's ever played with aside from the Maniacs. So high praise from his cornerback teammate, Kenny Moore. Gilly Lock gives the Colts a prime opportunity to take back the lead. Instead, they gain just 3 yards and settle for a field goal after Matt Ryan's 3rd and 7 pass is too far out of bounds for Kylan Granson. McLaughlin's kick is actually blocked, but still somehow finds its way through the uprights. We're looking at a 14-13 game with 2 minutes before the half. Cowboys looking to score, but on 3rd and 5, Prescott doesn't see anything he likes, and he's taken down by Kwity Paye. His 5th sack in 8 games for Paye, who's finally back and healthy for the Colts. Dallas punts to the Colts with 1:30 left before the 3rd quarter. After a couple incompletions, Colts face a 3rd and 10, but then Ryan finds Paris Campbell for 13. Campbell gets out of bounds with 1:06 left. A couple plays later, Ryan throws a slant to Pierce. The ball's tipped up into the air, and former Colt Malik Hooker comes down with it. He returns it all the way to the Colts 26 before finally going out of bounds, and the turnover results in a touchdown for Dallas. On 3rd and 9 from the 13, Prescott buys time and hits Michael Gallup, who trots on into the end zone 21-13 at the half. Both teams start the 3rd quarter with a 3-and-out. The Colts' second drive of the half starts at their own 10-yard line, but a 19-yard Jonathan Taylor run gets things going. Then on 3rd and 2, Ryan hits Pierce for 14. A couple plays later, Campbell gets 10 on 2nd and 9. Then a screen pass to Taylor gains 19 more. The Colts are in business at Dallas's 22. A few plays later, the Colts are facing a 4th and 1. Coach Saturday opts to go for it, and Ryan gets just enough on the QB keeper. First down at the 12 turns into second down at the 15 after a 3-yard Taylor loss. But Ryan would go back to his guy, Alec Pierce, who in the end zone. Ryan just kind of throws it up, and Pierce uses that big body to make the catch for the score. Mike, another example of giving your young playmakers a chance.
Whether it's Pierce or Michael Pittman or, not so much maybe Paris Campbell, but give him a chance to make a play. We saw that last year with Carson Wentz and Michael Pittman. Those were almost more jump balls, almost by design to maybe get a DPI, but give these guys a chance to make a play. That's what Alec Pierce's strength is. It's getting deep, it's getting vertical, and it's getting up and making the contested catches. We've seen Michael Pittman do that a lot as well. So I don't know whether I don't know whether the Colts don't trust protection to hold up to take the shots, or whether Matt Ryan doesn't trust his protection. But you've got to take these shots and give your receivers a chance to make a play.
Especially because not a whole lot else is going right for you, so might as well just hope a guy can make a great play. After the score, the Colts go for 2 to tie things up at 21. Ryan rolls to his right and throws to Campbell, who can't handle the pass. No good. It stays 21-19. We enter the 4th quarter with the Colts trailing by just 2.
Let's just stop here. And it was 21-19, and it's a pretty good game. Can we do that, or do you think we really need to finish this up?
If you had shut the game off after 3 quarters, you probably went to bed feeling pretty good last night. Yeah. Hanging in there with a top team in the NFC on prime time. I mean, like I said at the top of the show, the Colts gave you just enough hope to make you think they might be able to do it. And then they were hit by an absolute avalanche. The Cowboys.
So we're going to go on, aren't we? We're going to finish this.
We got it. Okay. I'm here for a reason, Mike.
Okay, all right. Hey, it's your show. It's your show. I'm along for the ride. Go ahead.
Don't worry. I got it highly condensed here. The Cowboys would score 33 unanswered, aided by 4 consecutive Colts turnovers. Mo Alley Cox had a fumble returned for a touchdown. 2 awful Matt Ryan interceptions set the Cowboys up in good spots. And, the game would not be complete without a Matt Ryan sack fumble. Final score, 54-19. Mike, have you ever seen a 4th quarter implosion like this before?
No, I've seen the flip side. The Tampa game when Peyton came back from 35-14, but not like this. It was unbelievable how whatever they did was wrong. And not only wrong, but it cost them. I think the 33 points was the second most scored in league history in the 4th quarter. I think that's what they said, second or third most. And it's the most points the Colts have given up in any quarter. They've given up 28 3 times. But it's just hard to give up that many points, because generally you don't get enough possessions. But when you're turning it over like that, and they just about took the Matt Ryan sack fumble in for a touchdown, but he was the defender was ruled down by contact, because when he was scooping up the ball, he was sort of nudged by Will Fries, I think it was. But you just want to say, make it stop. And it was hard to watch, because what else could go wrong? And the interceptions were bad. Molly Cox it was a positive play until it wasn't. So it was unbelievable how a game that was 21-19 ended up 54-19. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I saw Nat Newell of the Indy Star had an interesting tweet. It said the Cowboys' 33-point fourth quarter differential ties the NFL record, first set in 1925 by the Chicago Cardinals over the Milwaukee Badgers. That is all-time bad for the Colts right there. Before we get into takeaways here, need new windows? Contact your hometown team today. Hometown Window and Doors are Central Indiana's premier, locally owned, full-service Anderson window dealer with master installers. From design to installation, the hometown team handles it all. They carry unlimited options with competitive pricing. Call them direct to get 35% off your windows through December 15th. Hometown Windows and Doors gives you all the perks of a national brand with that hometown feel. Visit them at hometownwindowteam.com today. All right, Mike, takeaways, which are really giveaways. The offense can't stop turning the ball over. 5 turnovers for Dallas led to 29 points. On the season, the Colts have allowed 93 points off of turnovers. That's nearly a third of their total points allowed. 26 turnovers leads the NFL, as do Matt Ryan's 13 interceptions, as do his 5 lost fumbles. And in fact, his 14 total fumbles are a franchise record. As a team, the Colts have fumbled 30 times, of course, the most in the NFL, and they've lost 12 of those, also the most in the NFL. Their minus 14 turnover differential is tied with New Orleans, who plays tonight, Monday night. Mike, this offense just can't get out of its own way.
The fumbles are unbelievable. 30 with, 4 games to go? I lose track of how much longer this is going to go on. 30. And they've lost 12. I mean, think if they're not covering all those. I mean, they could have 16, 18, 20 turnovers. And it's not been that long ago in Frank Reich's second and third year that they tied a franchise record with like 5, the fewest, with 5 fumbles. It's crazy. And keep in mind, there was almost another when Jonathan Taylor stretched out. Remember, he stretched out and the ball came in. He was down. But it just shows you how close it is. And again, Wally Cox, who's not a fumbler, but he's probably going to pick up the first down. I think he had just about the first down. And so it's been everybody. And I don't know what that is. They're like every team, and they practice and they focus and they harp and they stress and they emphasize ball security. I mean, what are you supposed to make these guys do? Walk around the complex with a football?
Yeah.
And have people poke at it when you walk by them? I don't know. It's the ones on Ryan, he's had, I think it's 14 now, and he's lost 5. A few of them were those early season where the center snaps, but the majority have been the sack strips. And you just have to, when you're around angry people, protect the ball. So I don't know. I'm not saying they'd be much better without the turnovers. They probably would, but this is a flawed team. But there's hardly any teams that can deal with this kind of turnover. 93 points on turnovers is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. But at some point, this is who you are. This is a team that can't take care of the football. Why would it get any better over the last 4 games, the last month of the season? So you're going to walk away from this season saying, can't protect the quarterback, can't protect the football, can't win. That's where they are. That's where they are. That's who they are.
Yeah, not much else to really say about that. You can't hang on to the football when it's right there in your hands. I don't know what you're doing out there. But what I do want to talk about, takeaway number 2 here is, in my eyes at least, Matt Ryan looks about done. There's little to no zip on his passes. The ball just hangs up in the air on him. He and his receivers look out of sync, which can kind of be understandable to a certain extent. You get hurt during the year, you get benched, you're on a new team, but it was supposed to look a lot better than this. At 37, he's also not nimble enough to consistently escape pressure. The lack of arm strength and athletic ability makes it really hard to come by big plays in this offense when your quarterback is so, I guess, limited in those fashions. My first question to you is, will Ryan finish the season as the starter?
Real good question, and we asked that to Jeff Saturday today. After the game, he said, hey, it's 5 minutes after a beating. Whatever I give you now won't be a good answer. But they're gonna have to talk this week. What I asked him today is, how do you balance over the last month of the season trying to win, because they're going to try to win. I mean, this is their job. You and I are here after a crappy game because this is what we do. We've got to do this, and that's what the team does. At the same time, you've got to be evaluating for the future, and that's one reason that Bernhard Raimann is at left tackle and Will Fries is at right guard. Is what do you have? Are they part of your future? And I asked him, how do you balance that with evaluation and winning, and and might you need to change quarterbacks? And he didn't give a definitive answer. He said everything will be under evaluation, and I don't know how you go on with Matt Ryan. I just don't know how you do it. Having said that, we expect Nick Foles or Sam Ehlinger to be better. They'll be different. And if they make a change, I don't know how you go back to Sam. I just don't. So if you're going to make that change, you go with Nick Foles, which we need to note that he was the backup. They moved him to backup last night, and they put Ehlinger back to 3. And nobody's been jerked around more on this team than Nick Foles. I mean, he's been backup 3. So we'll see. I tend to think they'll make a change, and I don't think it'll make a difference.
Yeah, I don't think it'll make a difference in the season, but at a certain point, I remember when Ryan was, I guess, quote unquote, benched the first time. It's kind of weird to call it a benching when he was actually injured.
When he couldn't play anyway. You're right. But they benched him, but it coincided with the shoulder injury.
And it also, do you remember what game that came after? Was that the
19 to 10 Tennessee game?
Tennessee game. Matt Ryan was not playing well, but he wasn't playing this bad. I remember at the time our main, I guess, complaint was still the pass protection, which I will say I think has improved the last several games. Raimann had his moments Sunday night where I think he did have a couple penalties, or at least one. But overall, I mean, he gave Ryan time from that left side over there. I don't think Parsons got a sack. They definitely got to Ryan, but usually they would have to bring pressure and blitz. That's part of why they did so much better earlier in the ball game. Is the Cowboys weren't blitzing as much. They were trying to get to the Colts with their front four, their defensive line, and then the Colts were actually doing some things on them. So they brought the blitz, and then all hell broke loose because the Colts can barely handle a stunt, let alone a blitz.
Did you get the impression that I think 2 of those sacks were on the running back?
Taylor, yeah.
I mean, I know it's a tough task to do, but that's what you do. So I thought that the first one I noticed, he went outside when I've got my numbers mixed up. A number 6 for Dallas comes right up the gut, and Taylor kind of flared out to the left to take a guy, and you got to block inside out. And I thought one later was on him as well. So it's understandable that the quarterback feels the pressure because it's there, and that I think he's hearing ghosts because why wouldn't you? But boy, you got to help these guys when it comes to pass protection. It's not always the offense. It's not always the 5 guys. It's the tight ends. It's a running back. It's receivers getting open. But I thought 2 of those sacks were on JT.
Yeah, I agree. I guess that's kind of our answer when we were questioning earlier, why is Deion Jackson in the game in a 2-minute drill? why was it, it was less of a question when it was Nyheim Hines because he was such a good pass catcher. But Jonathan Taylor's never really had that role. Definitely not known for that at Wisconsin. That was one of the knocks against him in his draft. He was more of a pure rusher. He didn't really have the experience in the passing game, and that's kind of showing up now. But the offensive line at this point, back to what I was saying, I know I'm taking the long way to say this, but the offensive line has gotten better. The biggest problem now seems to be Matt Ryan can't stop turning the ball over. Do you think, obviously we both think he'll be benched at some point if he keeps playing like this. Do you think he'll be back next season if he gets benched?
We were talking in the press room last week about this, and my initial reaction was yes. Because let's say they're gonna have to take a quarterback in the first round or in the draft, let's say in the draft, first or second round. But you're not going to get a guy that's ready to play. You just aren't. So whoever you bring in, it's got to be with the idea that this other guy starts. Sam Ehlinger, Nick Foles. And it's harder and harder to argue. I said Ryan would be back when we were just shooting the ball in the press room. You're already on the hook for like $18 million, and if you bring him back, it's an extra 17. But if you don't bring him back and save 17, you're going to have to pay X number of million for a veteran guy to come in again and play babysitter. But with what we've seen, I don't know how. I'm less and less likely to think he returns. Is the lack of arm strength now a reflection of the injury he had, the sprained shoulder? Or is it he's 37 years old? I don't know. But as easy, and Jeff Saturday brought this up last week or the week before, it's easy to get rid of guys. It's easy to sit Bernhard Raimann. It's easy to do this. But then you got to replace him with somebody. So let's say that you're going to draft a guy and you're not bringing Matt Ryan back. Then what do you do? And I realize it's common and it's easy to say, well, of course you get rid of him. You're going to replace him. But with who? Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota. I don't know. I don't know who might be out there. Baker Mayfield.
Oh gosh.
I know. I know.
I saw that news today. I said, please, for the love of God, do not bring in Baker Mayfield.
So they're just. And we may have touched on this last week. They're just in such a bad situation because until you get the quarterback figured out, everything else is sort of on pause and secondary. And let's say they get the third best quarterback in the draft, and there's no assurance of that. They probably will, but that solves potentially your long term. But you've got to still take care of next year. And I think I've seen enough of Sam Ehlinger to believe that he can be a decent backup and keep a game going and maybe win a game, short term. I don't see him as being a 16, 17 game starter. I just don't. And I don't see Nick Foles being that. So, hey, okay, let's cut Matt Ryan. Cut him tomorrow if you want to.
Let him go play for the 49ers.
I saw that. And a buddy of mine that emails me all the time says, what if they waived Matt Ryan and with the idea that Frisco would pick him up and all that? Well, no one else would pick him up. That could work. But then you've got the $18 million next year that's guaranteed to worry about. So there are different things to worry about. But okay, let's do it tomorrow. But all that does is it eases your mind that he's not going to have any more turnovers. But it doesn't solve the problem at all. And again, I don't know how you fix this. They're in so deep with where they are. I don't know how you fix it, but they've got to fix it somehow.
It's at this point in the season, Matt Ryan would have to have a real nice finish to the year for me to even consider.
And what does that mean? No turn.
The Raiders game.
Yeah.
If he can play about like that for the rest of the year, which that was a bad Raiders team, that's a bad Raiders defense. There's a reason the Colts were able to win that game. But if he can play like that, maybe you consider bringing him back and letting him tutor a young quarterback because by all reports, he's been he would be a great example to follow of how you conduct yourself and be a professional in this league at quarterback, and someone who's done it at a very high level. But other than that, if he's not good enough this year, he's not going to be good enough next year. I say it's better to cut bait, save the $17 million, maybe go, I don't know, sign a guard or a tackle or something like that with that money, invest it into Taylor or Pittman, who have contracts coming up, draft your guy, and just let him compete with Ellinger and Foles for whoever starts the season. And then if he beats him out, he beats him out, and let him play. At this point, going into next year, if that's the route that the front office takes this offseason, they're not competing for a Super Bowl or probably not even seriously a playoff spot if you got a rookie quarterback like that. Obviously, those are goals, but they're not serious goals if you kind of restart with a young rookie quarterback. So unless Matt Ryan really shows something towards the end of the year, I'm kind of thinking the Colts might be better off saving that $17 million or whatever it is and just letting the young guy have an opportunity at it, because you don't want to pay $35 million basically for a tutor or a babysitter either.
Yeah, I think they won't say it's a money issue, but $17 million's a chunk of change, and like I say, he'd need to, in my mind, really finish strong, like you said, and with the schedule coming up, I don't know that that's very likely. You know, Houston's is awful in the final game, but I think he's not back next year. You know, and I've changed back and forth on that. I've just seen the arm lack, like you mentioned, zip and accuracy and all that, which is kind of what's been his strong suit. Is the ball gets from here to there when it's supposed to, and the turnovers are just inexcusable and unacceptable.
It was supposed to be Phillip Rivers 2.0, and it has not been nearly that good. Third and final takeaway here, the defense appears to be reaching a breaking point. Just one sack Sunday night. The team has now allowed 37 first-half points over the last two games, and opponents have rushed for 392 yards over the past two games combined on this defense, while averaging 5.6 yards per carry. So it's not even like Cowboys were just up by a lot of points and were just running the clock out. They may have been doing that, but they were still getting good gains. And while this defense has played well in the third quarter, they seem to run out of gas by the fourth. Of course, it's hard to blame the D in this Dallas game with all the turnovers. But, Mike, I think it's clear at this point, this defense has pretty much single-handedly won a few games for the Colts this year. I don't think they can really carry this team too much further.
No, and I'd like to have seen, as difficult as those situations were in the fourth quarter, I'd like to have seen a little more resistance for Dallas scoring. It looked awful easy. I'll never say a player or a team has quit. I know what goes into playing in this from being around it and talking to these players. I'm never even remotely pointing a finger at that, but Dallas scored awful easy on some of those turnovers, and I just think that the defense is spent. It's given all it's got, and maybe they overperformed early through the first half of the season, and I think the weight's gotten too big on them. It'll help. It's going to help to have Quiddy payback, and again, Gilmore's playing his ass off, but I just think they've asked too much of this defense, and I hope they can finish strong, because if not, the last three games, I can't imagine Houston doing much. But it's going to be tough if the defense can no longer hold up its end, because we know the offense can't.
And it's a shame, because it really was a good defense that was assembled. I'm sure having a healthy Darius Leonard in the middle would have made a lot of difference, getting those turnovers, making things easier on them. But going drive in, drive out, just trying to make a team punt over and over and over again without getting those turnovers is extremely difficult. Obviously, Gilmore was able to get one last night, and the Colts just got 3 points out of it. So you got to feel for those defensive players who, are playing their butts off. And it's not too late to reward the ones who are playing well by voting for them in the Pro Bowl. Stephon Gilmore deserves to be in the Pro Bowl. Both D tackles, Buck and Grover, do as well. I would say at least those three deserve the recognition. So go out and vote for those guys. make sure they feel the love out there because they're playing so hard and playing very well on a team that the offense is just holding them back.
Need new windows? Let the Hometown team help. Hometown Windows and Doors is Central Indiana's premier locally owned full-service Anderson dealer with master installers. From design to installation, we handle it all, carrying nationally known brands like Anderson with more options and competitive pricing. Call us direct and get 25% off your windows if you buy within the next 60 days.
Please contact your Hometown team today. We are Central Indiana's premier locally owned full-service Anderson dealer.
National brand, hometown feel.
All right, Mike, I did not spot any injuries in this game. Is there anything that I missed?
No, Jeff Saturday said there were no injuries from the game, which is a good thing.
Here we go. There's our silver lining right there. Let's go ahead and look at the playoff picture and draft order. If you're going playoffs, this won't take long. The Colts aren't technically eliminated, but they would need a miracle. Both the division appears out of reach with the Titans at 7-5, and also the wild card does not appear to be within the Colts' grasp either. The Jets are the lowest seeded wild card team, and they're 7-5 as well.
You put that in there just because you feel obligated to put in the fact that they're not eliminated yet, right?
Until they're eliminated, I will keep the playoff picture in there.
So you're the guy who understands when the network puts up to the playoff picture, and in the hunt, they always put the Colts in there when they were like 4-7-1 in the hunt. So you sort of understand that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I do, but I wouldn't go that far. There's a difference between being not technically eliminated and being legitimately in the hunt.
See where they are now. The body's on the ground, and the hands twitching. They're not dead yet. The hands twitching, so they're still alive. Okay.
That's a very morbid example of you, Mike, but I like it. Let's look at the draft order because that seems to have more life to it. With that loss, the Colts have now moved from the 14th overall pick to the 9th overall pick if the season were to end today. The Colts are one of 5 4-win teams. Of course, the tie from that Week 1 Houston game makes them the highest-ranked 4-win team. Carolina is the lowest-ranked 4-win team with the 5th overall pick. So the Colts heading into a bye week is good news for them. Hopefully some of these 4-win teams can pick up some W's this weekend, and the Colts can just keep inching closer and closer to not the top pick overall. Houston's basically got that wrapped up. They still have just 1 win on the year. The picks 2, 3, and 4 are all 3-win teams. I was really rooting for Denver to beat a Lamar Jackson-less Ravens team, and of course they just couldn't do it. But there's a lot of time for this draft order to fluctuate, Mike, with the remaining schedule of course, the bye week, which I mentioned, at Minnesota. And we learned today that game will be played at 1 p.m. Saturday, December 17th. You can watch it locally on Fox 59, but that will be a Saturday game. And then after Minnesota, the Colts host the Chargers on Monday Night Football. Chargers just lost to the Raiders, go figure. And then the Colts traveled to New York to play the Giants on New Year's Day. And, of course, they finish up the season at home against Houston. But, Mike, looking at that schedule and kind of breaking down where the Colts are, I think it's very viable that the Colts finish this season and go into the spring with the top 10 pick.
Well, yeah, I thought all along there was a chance they could beat the Giants. I realize the Giants are in the thick of the race in their division, but I just thought they didn't really shock me or put any awe into me, but they find ways to win, and they're going to, or
at least tie,
or at least tie, and they're going to need that game. They're going to need that game. So it's funny because after the game last night, Jeff Saturday mentioned he told the guys, well, we're in gut check time. Well, a week before, he said he went in and told them that this is where you're going to define who you are. So I don't know how much more of that he can pull out, but you're pulling me over to the dark side to where it's all about draft order now, and they need to get as high as possible because they got to take that quarterback, and the better draft positioning to some degree will lower what it's going to take to get even higher as far as giving up, because they're going to aren't they going to get up in the top 5, top 4?
Most likely. You're looking at Chicago's the 2nd overall pick. They have Justin Fields, who's really shown a lot of promise this year. You got The Eagles own the Saints pick, and the Saints pick 6 overall. Obviously, the Eagles don't need a quarterback. I'm sure they'll be extending Jalen Hurts this offseason. But some of these other picks, Seattle has Denver's pick at 3rd overall. You don't know how they feel about Geno Smith long term. I would say they probably re-sign him and maybe draft somebody. Same with the Lions, the Lions own the Rams pick, and the Rams are 4th. So the Lions, do they stick with Goff? Do they draft his eventual replacement? They're probably going to draft somebody when you're drafting that high, although Goff has played decently well this season. So like you said, another team that's in front of them, although I don't think the Jaguars are going to trade with the Colts so that their division foe can draft a quarterback, but the Jaguars don't need a QB at 7. The Cardinals don't need a QB at 8. So there's several teams picking in the top 10 ahead of the Colts who don't necessarily need a quarterback. But, of course, doesn't mean some of the lower teams who do need a quarterback won't trade up ahead of them. So the Colts are going to have to trade up as high as they can to go take their guy. And the worse they finish, the better draft pick they get. Like you said, the less they'll have to give up to flip with another team who doesn't need that QB.
Yeah, and as some guys have mentioned in the press room, if you lock on a guy who you think is that guy, not the top 2 quarterbacks, but let's say the 3rd guy, then you don't worry about the cost. The cost doesn't matter. It may hurt, but you do whatever it takes to move into that spot to get the 3rd quarterback or whatever. I can't see them having a chance at the top 2 guys, but they probably have a shot at the 3rd guy. And whether it's Chris Ballard or the new GM or whomever, you simply do whatever it takes as far as draft picks to get the guy, because until you get the guy, you're 4-8-1.
And who knows, if Chicago finishes with that 2nd overall pick, maybe they'll be able to bolster up enough to trade with Chicago and get that 2nd guy, whether it's Stroud from Ohio State, Bryce Young from Alabama. The Kentucky kid is rising up draft boards. He might be some team's 2nd or even 1st quarterback on their board. Who knows? It's all you never know how it's going to fall. I remember there was a lot of surprises a few years ago when San Francisco took Trey Lance 3rd overall. That's still an extremely fascinating quarterback draft, looking at Lance, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. It seems like year by year how we would rank those guys seems to change. So there's a lot of time still left, a lot to be determined. 4 games left in this season. Of course, as we mentioned, the Colts heading into a bye week, and so will we. No preview show this Thursday because there's nothing to really preview, and of course, nothing to recap on Monday, but we will be back next week to preview the Colts road trip to Minnesota. So thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and download for us. Follow Mike on Twitter at mchappell51. You can follow the Blue Zone on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone. We'll keep coming at you with Colts content even through the bye. And until next week, take it easy, Colts fans.